Hi everyone, welcome to Whispered Fates. Today I'm excited to share a news story with you. Ethan Miller, a struggling farmer barely keeping his small farm afloat, gave away his entire harvest to a hungry veteran who couldn't afford a meal. This act of kindness emptied his roadside stand and threatened the mortgage payment on his family land. But when a line of military vehicles appeared on his dusty road 3 days later, Ethan discovered his simple gesture of compassion was only the beginning of an extraordinary story. Ethan Miller wiped sweat from his brow as he arranged tomatoes at his roadside stand. The small wooden structure sat at the edge of his 10-acre farm, the last piece of land his family still owned. 3 years of drought had forced him to sell the rest. Another slow day, he muttered, checking his watch. The mortgage payment was due in 5 days. Ethan had scraped together most of it, but still needed another $200. This weekend's sales were his last hope to avoid missing a payment. His old pickup truck needed repairs too. The engine made concerning noises each morning, but Ethan couldn't afford to fix it. Without that truck, he couldn't transport his produce to the weekend farmers market in town. Ethan lived alone in the farmhouse his grandfather built. His wife, Sarah, had passed away 2 years ago from cancer. The medical bills had drained their savings, leaving Ethan with nothing but the farm and memories. Despite his troubles, Ethan always greeted customers with a warm smile. The locals appreciated his fair prices and the quality of his produce. Some even told him his tomatoes were the best in the county. As the afternoon sun beat down, Ethan noticed a man walking slowly along the road. The stranger wore faded jeans and a worn military cap. His posture was stiff, and he limped slightly with each step. The man stopped at Ethan's stand, examining the vegetables without touching them. Ethan saw the veteran's insignia on his cap. "Those tomatoes look mighty fine," the man said quietly. "Fresh picked this morning," Ethan replied. "You serve?" the man asked. Ethan nodded. "2 tours in Afghanistan. Name's Michael." "Thank you for your service," Ethan said, extending his hand. Michael picked up a tomato, hesitated, and put it back down. "Just looking today, trying to stretch my disability check till the end of the month." Ethan noticed how thin Michael appeared. The veteran's hands trembled slightly as he returned the tomato to the pile. "You look like you could use a good meal," Ethan said. Michael shrugged. "Been better days. Got laid off last month from my security job when my leg acted up. Still waiting on increased benefits." Ethan thought about his own empty refrigerator and the bills piling up on his kitchen table. The mortgage payment loomed in his mind, but something about the veteran's quiet dignity moved him deeply. "Hold on a minute," Ethan said, grabbing a cardboard box from behind his stand. He began filling it with vegetables, tomatoes, cucumbers, green beans, and potatoes. Michael stepped back. "I can't afford all that. It's not for sale," Ethan replied, continuing to fill the box. "It's for you." "I don't take handouts," Michael said, his voice firm but tired. Ethan paused and looked directly at Michael. "It's not a handout. Consider it a thank you for your service." Michael hesitated, his pride visibly wrestling with his hunger. "I didn't serve to get free vegetables." "I know that," Ethan said. "But my dad was in Vietnam. He always said the hardest part was coming home and feeling forgotten." He added 6 ears of corn to the box, his premium items that always sold quickly. Each vegetable he added represented dollars he desperately needed. "Take it," Ethan insisted. "There's plenty more where this came from." This wasn't entirely true. The box contained nearly half of what Ethan had harvested that morning. With the drought, his crop yield was already down by 30% from last year. Michael slowly accepted the box. "I don't know what to say." "No need to say anything," Ethan replied. "Just enjoy it." As Michael turned to leave, Ethan called out, "Wait." He went to his cooler and pulled out 2 dozen eggs from his small flock of chickens. "Protein. You need it." Michael's eyes moistened slightly. "Thank you." "Truly." After the veteran departed, an elderly couple stopped to buy tomatoes. They were Ethan's regular customers, but today they only purchased 2 instead of their usual dozen. "Sorry, Ethan," the woman said. "Social Security doesn't stretch like it used to." By sunset, Ethan had made only $37. Several cars had slowed down but driven past without stopping. The weekend crowd never materialized. That night, Ethan sat at his kitchen table calculating numbers. Even if he sold everything tomorrow, he would still be short on the mortgage payment. "Should have kept those eggs," he muttered to himself, then immediately felt ashamed for the thought. The next morning brought more bad news. Dark clouds gathered, and by noon, rain poured down. Ethan had to bring his produce inside to protect it from the downpour. No customers would come in this weather. As he closed up the stand, his phone rang. "Mr. Miller, I'm calling about your mortgage payment," the banker said. "This is your second notice." "I know," Ethan replied. "I just need a few more days. We've been flexible, but we can't extend again," the banker explained. "If you miss this payment, we'll have to start proceedings." The rain continued through Sunday, washing away Ethan's hopes of making enough for the mortgage payment. By Monday morning, he had resigned himself to calling the bank and begging for one last extension. As he made coffee, Ethan noticed his hands trembling slightly. The farm had been in his family for 3 generations. The thought of losing it made his stomach twist. "Sarah would know what to do," he whispered to the empty kitchen. The phone call went exactly as he feared. The bank manager was polite but firm. "I understand your situation, Mr. Miller, but this is business. We've already given you 2 extensions." Ethan hung up and walked to his porch. The morning sun had emerged after the rain, making the wet fields glisten. He wondered how many more mornings he would have this view. Despite everything, Ethan didn't regret helping Michael. The memory of the veteran's grateful face gave him a small measure of peace. Around 10 o'clock, Ethan heard vehicles approaching. He expected the bank representative with paperwork about the foreclosure. Instead, he saw something unusual. 3 military vehicles were coming down his long driveway, followed by 2 civilian cars. Ethan stood up, confused. Had there been some sort of accident on the main road? The lead vehicle stopped, and a man in an army dress uniform stepped out. Ethan recognized Michael immediately, though he stood straighter and looked more confident than before. "Michael, what's going on?" Ethan asked, walking toward him. Michael smiled. "I wanted to thank you properly for your kindness." A tall man in a business suit emerged from one of the civilian cars. "Mr. Miller, I'm David Anderson, CEO of Heartland Agricultural Cooperative." Ethan shook his hand automatically, still confused. "Nice to meet you, but I don't understand." Michael stepped forward. "After I left your stand, I told my commanding officer about what you did. I'm actually still in the reserves, and we were having a leadership meeting that weekend. I didn't do anything special," Ethan said. "You gave away food you couldn't afford to lose," Michael replied. "My CEO is Colonel Anderson's brother. When he heard the story, he made a call." David Anderson nodded. "My company has been looking to partner with local farmers who embody the values we believe in. When my brother told me about you, I had to come see for myself." Ethan looked at the small convoy of vehicles. "All this for some vegetables?" "Not for the vegetables," Michael said quietly. "For the sacrifice behind them." Another man stepped forward from the second civilian car, introducing himself as a reporter from the local newspaper. "Hope you don't mind, but your story deserves to be told." Ethan invited everyone into his modest farmhouse. The kitchen was barely large enough to accommodate them all. He felt embarrassed by the worn furniture and peeling wallpaper, but no one seemed to notice. "Can I offer anyone coffee?" Ethan asked, reaching for his nearly empty canister. "We brought some refreshments," David Anderson said, as one of his assistants carried in a box of pastries and coffee. As they settled around Ethan's kitchen table, David explained why they had come. "Heartland Agricultural Cooperative works with family farms across the state. We're expanding our network of local suppliers for our farm-to-table restaurant chain and organic grocery stores." Ethan nodded, still confused about why they were in his kitchen.